Hey there, I'm Michael Stack, CEO of Amaxx and founder of the Amaxx Workers' Comp Training Center. So I grew up a Cubs fan in Valparaiso, Indiana, which is just outside of Chicago. And while running a company and with my wife raising 4 kids, sitting down to watch a game very, very rarely makes the top of the priority list, except of course when they won the World Series last year. So while I don't have time to do that, but I do want to know how well they're doing. How well is their season going? So every once in a while, I'll just flip over to ESPN and I'll check the standings to get an indication of how well the season is going, and it gives me a very comprehensive snapshot look. Turns out they just moved into first place. So their season hopefully seems to be on the right track. But in baseball, just like in workers' compensation, there are a million statistics that you can track and dive into the most minute detail. But how do you know in work comp how well your program is going? What is that comprehensive leading indicator to let you know whether or not your program is on the right track? I want to introduce you to the return to work ratio, and I'm going to show you how to calculate it. Take a look at this board here. What you're doing in this ratio is you're tracking the number and the percentage of your injured workers that return to work within 0 to 4 days. You are tracking the number and percentage of your injured workers that return to work in 0 to 4 days. The best in class programs will be at 95% or better. The best-in-class programs will be at 95% of injured workers returning to work in 0 to 4 days. So let's take a look very briefly at this quick example of how you track this and how you calculate it. You're taking the injury date and you're comparing it simply to the return to work date. How many days was that individual out of work? So you could see here very simply on this example, 0 days, 3, 20, 30, and 60. And then here's what you're going to do with this next. So once you have the information, then you graph it in Excel or a similar type program to visually represent in a snapshot, just like looking at the standings, how well you're doing. What you're shooting for is 95% or better of your employees returning to work within 0 to 4 days. Your program, when you graph it out in a best-in-class program, will look something like this, the graph that you represent. Where you might be right now is more like this. The vast majority of your employees are coming back to work in 30 days, 45 days, 60 days, 150 days. It doesn't matter where you start. It's a matter of understanding where you are. Then you can analyze what are those factors that are causing that challenge. And you can work to get just one employee back to work 1 day sooner. And little by little, your graph starts to change from looking something like this to something like this. The return to work ratio, the most comprehensive indication of your program. It tracks things like how well you're reporting your claims. How well are you getting your injured workers to the right medical treatment at the right time? How well are you getting those restrictions from those medical providers and feeding them into your return to work program? How well are you crafting transitional duty jobs and presenting those, communicating them properly to your employees? The return to work ratio factors all of those elements and more. I highly recommend it's something that you implement and track in your program. Again, I'm Michael Stack with Amaxx, and remember, your success in workers' compensation is defined by your integrity. So be great.